waking, saying time has come to wake up from this nightmare of lies. So many shattered lives, reaching out, crying out for freedom, crying out for love, carried by a current till we stand side by side on the brink of a brand new dawn. We come together while the waters rise, and there's a stirring deep inside, deep inside. We come together to stand up for our lives. What on earth does it take to thrive? While we've been sleeping, our hearts were beating so much closer than we ever knew. Beneath the noise, there is an inner voice whispering clear and true. The veils are finally lifting, the waves becoming clear. And there's a dream without a limit, and a vision so strong, every person knows they belong. We come together while the waters rise, there's a stirring deep inside, deep inside. We come together to stand up for our lives. What on earth does it take to thrive? Come together while the waters rise, and there's a stirring deep inside, deep inside. We come together to stand up for our lives. What on earth does it take to thrive? Out in the open, thrive, healing what's broken. Every heart, every life, claiming our place in it now. Come together while the waters rise. There's a stirring deep inside, deep inside. We come together to stand up for our lives. We all have what it takes to thrive. Come together while the waters rise. There's a stirring deep inside. We come together to stand up for our lives. We all have what it takes to thrive. We come together while the waters rise. There's a stirring deep inside. Come together to stand up for our lives. We all have what it takes to thrive. We all have what it takes to thrive. We all have what it takes to thrive.
Good day, freedom lovers from all over the world. It's really great to be back with you. Today's topic is spirituality, science, and worldview, a vital synergy in these critical times. And we have the extraordinary privilege today of spending the full 2 hours with Reverend Michael Beckwith. So before we dive in, I just want to let people know what the format for today's show is. I want to welcome the Freedom Portal members who make this whole thing possible, as well as those joining us on streaming platforms. A special thank you to dozens of our partners and affiliates for streaming on their channels. We're streaming the first part of the show live on all the channels, and then after about an hour, we will cut over to Zoom only, and part 2 will be for Freedom Portal members, both old and new. And for those of you who are new today on various platforms, I cannot recommend strongly enough how valuable I think you'll find the Freedom Portal to be, especially at this moment in history. The information, the conversations, the sense of community. I don't know anything quite exactly like it, and that's why we're doing it. And later on in the show, when we do that change, I'll bring Leandrew on to show you how to rejoin the rest of the show via a free Freedom Portal trial membership. Okay, so for now, let me tell you about today's guests in a formal manner, and then we'll bring him on and dive right in. So I know many of you are very familiar with Michael Beckwith, and I have the great privilege to have been a friend and colleague for a number of years. Just have tremendous respect for this guy. And formally speaking, Reverend Beckwith is the founder and spiritual director of the Agape International Spiritual Center. So what's that? It's a trans-denominational community founded in 1986. 1986, let that in. And when you see this guy, you'll see it looks like that could have been yesterday. He's kept himself very fit and spiritually tuned in. So Agape's local community outreach programs feed people experiencing homelessness. It serves incarcerated individuals. It partners with community service organizations. It's active in children's schools and youth homes. It supports the arts and advocates for the preservation of our planet's environmental resources. Michael is also the co-founder of the Association for Global New Thought and co-chair of the Season for Nonviolence, along with Arun Gandhi. Michael's the author of many books, including Spiritual Liberation, 40-Day Mind Fast, Soul Feast, A Manifesto of Peace, and Transcendence, Expanded, and Life Visioning. In addition, his 2009 PBS special, The Answer Is You, was the impetus for his book of the same name. I super highly recommend all of these books, but especially that one. If you're looking outside yourself for answers, he brings it all home. Michael was also one of the featured teachers in the 2006 documentary, The Secret, and the best-selling book by the same name that followed the film. So enough of this formality about history. Michael, come on and say hello. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, Foster, it's my joy to be with you and to be with all of the individuals who love freedom and liberation. It's my joy to hang out with you today.
Well, thank you. I know probably Saturday's your day off because I know you're very busy all week and especially on Sundays. And I later on, I'm going to show some clips of the service that happened less than a week ago, literally last Sunday. Michael and his church were able to open up in person for the first time in 2.5 years. And when I heard about that, I thought, wow, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that one. Then the YouTube video came out, and I'm going to play you some clips because it's one thing to talk about what goes on at Agape. It's a whole nother thing when you get to actually see and hear it. But before we do that, let's start in with you, Michael. So I talked a little bit about the incredible amount of things that you have accomplished, but let's go right to the essence of it. So who are you really right now?
I consider myself a servant. I'm here serving humanity and seeking to wake people up to the glorious nature of who they are as luminous, infinite beings, bringing them to an awareness that, as you mentioned in The Answer Is You, everything they can want, hope for, desire is already within them. And that I'm trying to teach people to listen to their soul, to be their own authority, to be sovereign, and not allow any external minor deities to steal their attention, to pull them into any kind of social milieu or societal fantasies. That we have a soul faculty that is so powerful when activated that we can actually listen to it and be guided. So I'm seeking to wake people up. I mean, I think people are so incarcerated by the media and so incarcerated by whatever narrative is going on by our government that they don't know reality. They don't know themselves.
Yeah.
So, I started Agape in 1986, but prior to that, I was a spiritual therapist for 7 years, saw people every single day. And prior to that, I was attending USC. I was a psychobiology major. I was getting ready to go to med school. And I had a great spiritual awakening that just changed the trajectory of my life. And I had to discover what had happened to me and integrate that. It took years of integration. And so my path basically evolved from an awakening and then subsequent awakenings after that, so that what I'm saying, I actually know to be the truth.
That helps. Well, as I was thinking about this conversation, I remembered back to when I was in college. I was getting ready to graduate, had no idea what I was going to really do. So a bunch of us did some vocational testing to see what we would be, might be good at in the world. So I filled out this form and I was talking about, my quest for truth and my love of people and wanting to share the truth around the world and help the world recover and so forth. And so the machine spit back that I should be a spiritual pastor. And
you're doing that in your own way.
Well, I've come to realize that I am. At the time, I thought, well, I'm not a member any longer of any particular religion, so I didn't think that would be a fit. And then later on in life, when I met you, I realized, you don't have to be an adherent to a particular, leap of faith dogma in order to actually serve people in just the way that I had vision. So that's one of the reasons you've been a hero of mine for a long time. But let me follow up on what you just said about if you hadn't had that spiritual awakening, that you might have gone into psychobiology. So
I might have gone to med school. But I soon realized that the different portal that they look at life through is just so limited in terms of healing that I'm glad that whatever name you want to call this grand presence moved me out of that dynamic, because I have friends now who are doctors who, are very limited in their thinking and they're protocol driven rather than health driven. It's an interesting system that we're in.
Well, to have even been interested in that, you must have a regard for science. And I remember a few years ago, Kimberly and I were down at the Rhythmia Life Enhancement Center in Costa Rica, leading a workshop, and we'd brought a couple of cutting edge scientists down there. And you were just finishing up your week and you joined us for a couple of meetings and talked about your respect for science and the scientific method. And one of the things that particularly intrigues me that I want to share with people today is how that sense of logical coherence that science is based on can come together with the more metaphysical direct experience of spirituality. So I think maybe the place to start to go into that a little bit is, what was that spiritual experience that you had where the calling was so strong?
I was my last year at USC, and I started to have some spiritual experiences, but I didn't know what they were at the time. I was pretty much agnostic, atheistic. I was a very revolutionary, activist kind of guy. So religion was the opiate of the people as far as I was concerned. So what was happening to me, I couldn't explain it. And I didn't want to tell my professors because I didn't want to be deemed, crazy.
Right.
So anyway, I was leaving my body a lot. I was doing a lot of things. And just to make the longer story short, one night I was stabbed in the heart in a lucid dream. The pain was excruciating, physically and emotionally, and I died. And when I woke up, I could see that we were surrounded by this presence that I called love beauty. I didn't use the name God. That God was not a good word for me at the time. The intelligence and the love and the beauty so penetrated my being, shifted my perception. And then I went on a journey to discover what had happened to me. I studied the Bhagavad Gita, I studied the teachings of Jesus. I studied Walter Russell, who was a great mystic coming out of America, and realized some similar strands of awakening happened within me. And so it took years of integration for that. And interestingly enough, talking about science, at the time, UCLA had a parapsychology department. Can't think of the name of it right now. And I would go over there and study the science of what was happening to me. And they were doing non-local healing and all manner of things. So I was very interested in the science of awakening. And that particular department is no longer funded at UCLA, but it was open for many years. So that allowed me to move into studying scientists like Walter Russell, and then the quantum physicist. You know, when you talk about science, I basically think that spirituality and science, real science, is the same thing with different language. Whether you're talking about a unified field theory, quantum reality, pure consciousness, it's different language talking about the same thing. So in the medieval times, science and religion had a divorce, and now they've reconnected with the quantum physicists. So that's just a little taste. I mean, I could go on with my experiences, but that's just a little bit of what happened to me. I'll tell you this. They were so intense that I thought it was the marijuana I was smoking in college. And so the first thing I did, I stopped smoking. I didn't. And then it got bigger. And then when I had that awakening, I never smoked again. It was just like the awareness was so intense. It was a real high.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Walter Russell. I don't know if you know, but he was one of my major mentors as well. As after he died, but through all of his work, he's just been hugely influential on me. And I was on the scientific advisory board of the University of Science and Philosophy, which was carrying forward his work. And that was one of the places where I saw so clearly that that Walter Russell and his wife Lau were so deeply spiritual mystics. That's fundamentally who they were, but they realized that both philosophy and science were simply expressions of that spiritual awareness into practical application in the world. And in fact, probably most people on this call don't know that Walter Russell was the White House, the official White House artist to Roosevelt. He did sculptures, he did paintings. He was the national male figure skating champion. The guy was just a genius. At
69 years old. He did that at 69 years old.
Yeah, and then at one point in his life, he sounds like similar to you. He went into an altered state and actually basically stayed there for about 39 days. And people supported him and took notes on what was coming through him. Yep. And that became both The Secret of Light and The Universal One. Anybody who hasn't seen those two books, what are you waiting for? They're just absolutely astounding books. And I call people like him and Arthur Young, Bucky Fuller, and Nassim Haramein, to me, those are what I call visionary scientists, where the vision came first, and then they did the work to learn the language to say what they had seen to other people and to try to work with the scientists, because they were way ahead in terms of seeing the unity and that you can't have a unified field theory without consciousness.
Absolutely. He was definitely one of my heroes, and definitely let me see that I wasn't crazy. When I studied his altered state consciousness and realized that's what was happening to me, it let me know that I was not crazy, that this was very authentic, this was very real. So I studied his works. I have his works here, still refer to them from time to time. I mean, he invented the duplex. I mean, and as you said, he was a great artist. And if you remember the story, he was a painter at first.
Yes.
Then the White House had somebody had hired this guy from France to do a bust. He backed out at the last moment. Walter Russell said, I'll do it, even though he had never sculpted before. Yeah. He got on a train and meditated all the way to DC. And by the time he got off the train, he says, I know how to sculpt. Yeah. And that particular sculpture is at the Smithsonian Institute today. I mean, he really, as you said, he brought the big spiritual consciousness into practical things. He was a multimillionaire. He trained Arabian horses. He was an ice skater, been at the duplex. He basically predicted the different elements in the periodical table before scientists even discovered them.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things I was thinking of, that he saw in his vision. He was literally shown the whole octave spiral structure of the universe. And part of that was seeing the nodal points, kind of the musical notes of this spiral was where the atomic elements each reside at particular frequencies and pressures. So he saw it so vividly that he was able to come back and say, well, you know, we're missing at least 3 of them, and this is where you're going to find them. And sure enough, every single one of them was then found. So what does that mean about our spiritual nature and the unified field? So let me jump into the next big question with you is, what is your working definition of God?
I generally say the presence that's never an absence. The presence is everywhere in its fullness. And words pale to describe it, but love, beauty, intelligence, life itself is the presence of God. Now, many people, when they use the word God, they think of a man in the sky, the guy in the sky, or something like that. And it's not their fault. Religiosity has basically brought that through the evolution of our species, it brought that to people. But it's a presence that's never an absence. Sometimes I'll say to myself, it's the all is all. It's the all is all. And then, as I say, when I first had my awakening, I didn't use the word God because God always meant a him or a man or something like that. Later on in life, I embraced the word again because I understand that I'm not speaking of an anthropomorphic being. There's an old statement that the God made us in his image and likeness, and we've been trying to return the favor ever since. We've been trying to make God into a human image. and so God is formless, which means when we hear that we're the image and likeness, doesn't mean we look like God in form. I teach that we share a faculty with the Spirit. And that faculty is that we have the ability to think independent of circumstances. The same way that this grand presence out of nothing, not even a grain of sand, birthed the cosmos, multidimensional universes, galaxies, solar systems, living biology. Out of nothing, we can birth a whole new life with our awareness. And so that's the image and likeness of God. It's not form, it is the faculty of awareness. Yeah.
Beautifully said. It's one of my, maybe this is the wrong word to use, but one of my crusades for the last few years has been to ask everybody, what is their definition of God? Because the only thing that has caused more murder throughout human history than the state is religion. And because just as the state, all the different states, the different governments and so forth have their individual claim on the truth, on the law and so forth. And obviously, world wars have been fought over that. Prior to that, the church got into the same problem where all these different factions were trying to impose their particular interpretation of the word of God on the world. And, it led to a lot of violence. But what I have been finding, with the exception of very few so rigorously fundamentalist religious people in whatever religion they're in, whose view does not go beyond just whatever is said on these particular pages that were written down a long time ago or something like that, virtually everyone else that I've met, when I asked them, they all describe in their own words that same experience that you just described so beautifully. with that it's ever present, that it's conscious, that it's alive, that it's full of love, and it's what nurtures us. And I believe that the two main things missing right now on the planet are a universal morality. And I think the non-aggression principle does that in a scientific way, in a philosophical way, and ultimately in a spiritual way. And then the other thing that has been missing is a common understanding, a common direct experience of spirit, of God. And the reason I especially wanted to have you on for this show is that you have been embodying that more accurately and powerfully, probably than anyone that I have met. I wrote a blog a number of years ago for our spirituality sector on our website, and it was very brief. And one of the things that I said was that if I were an extraterrestrial coming down, flying over planet Earth, and I began seeing these beautiful architectural structures, there were churches and temples and synagogues and meeting houses and so forth. And if I were just to go, cloak myself in invisibility, fly through these buildings, I would really be encouraged by what was happening on planet Earth, because people would be gathering in large groups. They would be singing. There would be incense and dancing. People are hugging each other and taking care of each other. And that it would be true in all those different buildings. The problem seems to start when the preacher gets up and starts talking about what you have to believe or else. Yeah. So I love that you call what you do trans-denominational, because I think it transcends the usual denominational polarizations, but also a whole lot of other polarizations. So can you say a little bit about what you mean by trans-denominational?
Well, the word trans means to go beyond. So it goes beyond and cuts through denominations, even religions, to that which is eternally true. So we don't want people to be myopic, because, as you said, a lot of the conflict is that people are caught up in their denomination, or they're caught up in their religion as the only way. And the way I look at it is, if everyone is in a different house or in the same house, looking at outside in different windows, they would see different perspectives based on the window they were looking at. All of those windows are different denominations and different religions. The idea is to step outside. When you step outside, you see the full spectrum of life. And there's a difference between spirituality and religiosity. Religiosity is a set of canons and a set of beliefs that people will teach to say this is the only way. But spirituality brings you to yourself. Religion, real religion, is supposed to bring you to the transcendent of your personal mind, your ego, your limited perceptions, so that you can see reality. Because humanity suffers because of humanity's inability to see reality. They only see a little speck of it, and they think that's what reality is. So true religion, true spirituality, has spiritual practices that allow you to open up and see, not with eyes, but to see with your awareness that which is real, that which is eternal, that which is forever. And then that becomes the activity of your awareness, and you live in a different world. You live differently. It's not just from aggression and survival. You thrive. You live from a different vantage point. And it's for everybody. There aren't any special people. They're just people who have specialized. Somebody plays the piano and you say, oh my God, that person, yeah, but they practiced. So they specialized in learning how to play the piano. So we specialize in meditation. We specialize in real study, real fellowship. We specialize in open our heart, kindness, compassion. Then people say, oh, he's a special guy. She's a special woman. No, they've specialized. They've stabilized those muscles, you see. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this is a particularly poignant time for humanity. I think people probably always said that, but I think it's actually right. We're facing a lot in the world right now. People always have, but the afflictions have never been global before. And I think we're living at a time where there's never been more of an opportunity for an individual to make a difference in a lot of people's lives because of the technology and communications that we have now. And it's also, I think, the riskiest time in human history because of technologies that we've developed and weaponized that have gone way beyond our consciousness. So my question for you is, how do you personally, and then how do you coach people in your congregation to access their spiritual nature while dealing with the real problems in the 3D world?
Yeah, I mean, you're really dealing with something here because we are living a time of, with so many systemic issues, as you alluded to on the planet, the environment itself, wars and rumors of wars, hate, racism, bigotry. So much is rising up at this particular time. So much polarization, and I think it's an indication of an old system that's dying. There's a whole vibrational shift that we're in the middle of, and we're seeing the remnants of an old paradigm begging to stay alive. Intrinsic within this is every issue that we're facing, there is a solution. Every single issue, there is a solution to everything happening, but the old paradigm is holding on to the old ways of being and the old ways of thinking, but the universe is progressive. So it cannot stay on the throne forever. So I advise, I try to teach people that if you're in fear, then obviously you're more controlled by the old paradigm. But if you're in fear, then it becomes very difficult for you to glean the wisdom, the guidance, and the direction as to what is yours to do at this time in human history. Everybody can't do everything, but everybody can do something according to their gifted nature, according to their particular choices they made, why they took a human incarnation. So that which would control us would first make us be afraid. And so, if you look at the teachings of the mystic Jesus, he said something very powerful. He said, in the world, there's going to be trials and tribulations. He said, be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. Now, again, I'm not speaking religion. I'm speaking the world is different from the planet. The world is a conglomeration of opinions, points of view, perceptions, positionalities that we all agree upon that condenses as a world experience and a worldview. The planet is Gaia, it's Mother Earth. That's not the world, that's a planet. And so when we understand that the world is malleable, it's always changing based on perception, beliefs, new discoveries, etc., we can impact the world with our consciousness, individually and collectively, and however we're motivated to make a difference on the planet. Now, he said, I've overcome that world. I don't live in that world. Then he gave you a spiritual practice. He said, be of good cheer. Now, that wasn't a throwaway statement, because whenever he taught anything, it was always about consciousness. He said, elevate your consciousness, have a connection so that you can actually be at the frequency of the answer. You'll overcome that world. You're not going to deny bad things are happening. It's not that. But you have to be in the frequency of the answer. You can't be in the hate. You can't hate people that disagree with you. You can't be violently opposed to people who are ignorant. You have to bring the answer and the solutions passionately, you see. And then we're changing the world. So somebody may be gifted in medicine. Somebody may be gifted in education. Somebody may be gifted in music or whatever, gardening, replanting trees and cleaning up the ocean. I mean, everybody has a gifted areas that they have to lend themselves to, but you have to do it from the place of leaning into the solution, leaning into the feeling that it's going to be okay. That's a practice, because we're bombarded every single day through the media with the lowest common denominator of the human experience. You're not bombarded with people having remissions. You're not bombarded with people who are ending truces. You're not bombarded with people who are overcome illnesses. You're not bombarded with all the miracles that are happening on the planet. You're bombarded with the lowest common denominator of the human experience. So you stay in your reptilian survival brain, and people just stay in fear. So that would be my opening comment to what you have asked me. Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting the way you talk about leaning into that it's going to work out, because people are constantly shocked to find how optimistic I am, given what I know about the world. And yet I don't feel like an optimist in the sense that I'm not just putting on rose-colored glasses. I feel like I've been down the rabbit holes enough that I'm seeing the light on the other side of the tunnel. And what I find is that probably the reason why I'm inclined to lean that direction is because the universe wants me to, because the entire unified field is supporting everything to thrive. That's not to say that people can't resist that or try to undermine or distort and, really do very cruel actions in the meantime. But what I keep seeing, just like the plants that keep coming up through the concrete and so forth, is that the unified field wants us to thrive. So I think that's where the optimism and the realism come together, in that when you do that in a skeptical but not a cynical way, it actually harnesses the power of the unified field through you in a very real way.
Absolutely. It's a feeling progressive universe. So it matches your feeling.
Yeah.
And so an optimist is not a person that doesn't believe that there aren't any issues. An optimist is simply an individual that believes there's a solution. So that's what an optimist is. It's not rose-colored glasses. It's an individual that believes that there's a solution to everything. And then when you lean into that awareness, I believe there's a vibrational match to that. And then you become more available to wisdom and insight and direction, intuition, direct knowing that moves you in a direction. You meet different kind of people. You have different kind of conversations. You meet solutionaries, that absolutely know there's terrible stuff happening on the planet. However, there's a solution to it. And I'd rather be in the frequency of a solution than just being mad at the negative stuff that's happening. That doesn't, there's no progress there. There's no benefit there.
Yeah, it feels better and it's way more effective in my experience.
Yeah.
So let me get personal with you for a moment here. What you do, you make it look easy, and you tap into spirit repeatedly in a way that is very inspiring to me and other people. What about, but I know you're a human being also. So what about that Sunday morning where you wake up and it's just kind of, I don't know, I'm not feeling particularly well. The attitude is, I think I'll just go back to sleep. And then you don't do it. You actually show up, and then spirit shows up through you. So can you share a little something with people on how you do that?
Well, my way of living, from what I put in my body through meditation, through my exercise programs, it's all a habit that has developed in me. So when I wake up on a Sunday, there's a whole protocol I do with what I'm drinking, what I'm eating, the yoga or the weightlifting that I do, the meditation. By the time I show up at Agape, I've had a whole day pretty much of being vibrationally and physically prepared to allow the energy to come through. And so I'm aware that there are moments, it's like my surface mind would be like, I don't want to do this. I'd rather just go to the beach. I can see it, but I'm witnessing that thought. So I don't like embrace that. I'm just aware that that's there. And then I still do my inner work. And by the time I show up, as soon as I say, good morning, everyone, then the flow of my connection with the spirit starts. So for instance, I spoke in Chicago a couple of weeks ago at a conference, and I got food poisoning. And the day I was supposed to speak. And so I had to speak in the evening. So in the afternoon, was physically weak. So I asked somebody to take me back to the hotel, and I would obviously have them come pick me up at the time to speak. So I went home. As soon as I walked in my room, I violently vomited. I think everything I'd ever eaten in life came up. And I went to bed, went to sleep, woke up about an hour before, got showered, got dressed. And I'm sitting in the audience, they're getting ready to introduce me. I'm still feeling very weak. I said, I didn't travel all the way to Chicago to not have anything to say, you know. So the moment I got up to speak and I started speaking, the energy started flowing through me. And in the first 5 minutes, my body was healed. Boom, all symptoms were gone. And then it opened up so I could curate what needed to be said for this particular audience. So when I get in the flow like that, I get personally, I get the dose first. You know, it's like, and when I finished speaking, I was no longer sick. It never came back. It just cleaned up everything. So I would say that my spiritual practice of meditation, and then my physical practice of whatever exercise I feel I'm doing on that particular day, and then putting my food in my body, the right food, all plays a part in it. Yeah. And plus as we talked about earlier, my openings that I've had were authentic. It was like, you know, I didn't get it from books, even though I can read books and validate my experience like Walter Russell. You know, it came first from the opening, and then I leaned into it through spiritual practice so I could stabilize it and it won't just be a memory. Oh, 13 years ago, I had this experience. You know, it's like the meditation helps stabilize it. And so, yeah, that's what happens for me.
Yeah, I just want to really shine a spotlight for everyone on what Michael just said, because this is not luck. You know, it's not just he happens to have a gift and the rest of us don't or something like that. Yes, he has his gift, like everyone has this gift. And then it's practice, it's hard work, it's discipline, and then it's showing up. I don't know anyone who is manifesting greatness for whom that is not true. And anyone who's sitting on the couch because you don't think you have that greatness in you, you are sorely mistaken. Give it a shot.
Absolutely. No, you mean that's our main work in our community. The main word, I mean, is practice. Do you have a spiritual practice? You can come hear me on Sunday or any of my teachers, but if you leave there and you don't apply it some kind of way, you're just being entertained. And we don't want you to be entertained. We want you to be entrained to a higher frequency through your spiritual practice. And one other thing, you know, when I was integrating this stuff, I turned my garage, this is years ago, I turned my garage into a soundproof room. And I would go in there for hours at a time, Foster, and do inner work on myself. I had mirrors, I had all manner of things where I would look at myself and see where my fears were, see where my insecurities were, and things like that. And I would do hours of inner work to actually embrace those parts of myself and then dissect it and see what lies I was telling myself. And then affirming and praying and doing different exercises to transcend. Even after I had the spiritual awakening, I still have personality and subpersonalities that are operating. And I had to work on that. So it was hours for months and months and months that allowed me to stabilize the higher frequency. So you're right. Nothing, I call luck living under cosmic knowledge. You know, you actually have to create your own luck through your practice.
Well, I've never heard that story before about your garage. And
Yeah.
I've also never shared before publicly that when back in the 70s, when I was fresh out of college and I was doing Aikido and Zen and self-hypnosis, and I had converted a barn where I lived into an Aikido dojo, and I taught classes for the local community. But I finally realized I have my own private padded room.
That's exactly what I had.
I would go out there and just lose all track of time. And I would be chanting and crying and laughing and dancing. I would spin really fast and then sit down and see if I could let go of my body enough that the spin wouldn't tip me. All those kinds of practices where I was just exploring it on my own. That's fun to hear that you were doing the same.
Yeah, I had mattresses up against the wall and everything. I mean, but it was intense work.
Yes.
And now I see a lot of things that I was doing back then, I see them have moved into society as spiritual practices that people do. I remember one time there was 4 or 5 of us in my garage and we were chanting and dancing and beating drums. And all of a sudden it started hailing. This is in Los Angeles. It started hailing on the garage in my backyard, only there. I mean, and we came outside and we said, what is this hitting the ground? And it's snowing, it's hailing, so we had tapped into something.
Apparently, not a lot of hail in Los Angeles, especially local.
Right, it was localized to my backyard. That was cool.
Folks, I think we have contact. Okay, I think this might be a perfect time to show people a few clips of the gathering that you recently had at Agape. Would you introduce what this gathering was after this whole length of time? What was going on that people are going to see?
It was July 24th. My birthday is July 21st. So they wanted to have a celebration of the founder's birthday. And we'd been closed and we'd been, working on what day could we open up. And I was going to do it earlier, but then there was a whole nother surge that took place. And I didn't want to create a lot of fear among people. So we stayed closed, but we opened on the 24th. So they were celebrating my birthday. We only have 2 fundraisers a year at Agape, one around my birthday and one around our anniversary in November. So we used it as that particular day. And we have 3 services. The first service is a way of meditation service that begins at 6:45 a.m. I teach meditation, we meditate. The second service is at 9. The last service is at 11:30. So we opened up for the 11:30 service. Mm-hmm. And people were so enthusiastic and excited, and some people flew in. A friend of mine flew in from Texas. Somebody flew in from Chicago. People flew in to be a part of this day. I will say this, we're going to reopen on August the 28th, which is the last Sunday of the month. It's going to be our choir Sunday. And then now we're getting our volunteers together to open up on a weekly basis. So the next opening is August 28th. And then after we have all of our internal mechanisms together, we will open up on a weekly basis.
Okay, great. So for any of those of you who might be new to this, let me share a taste of the magic of Agape with you.
So for all of you who are around the globe tuning in, and for all of you who are here, if this is your very first time being in worship and celebration with us, would you please stand? If you've never been here before, this is your first time, rise up. And remain standing for just a moment. For those of you who are around the globe, you can metaphorically or literally stand up as well. As we extend our hearts through our hands, and we say this to you, welcome to Agape. We recognize you. We see who you truly are. The spiritual image and the very likeness of God. You are a one-of-a-kind wonderful. You are a one-of-a-kind brilliant, unfolding genius. And today we get to celebrate your very existence. We get to celebrate your infinite potential. We appreciate you, and we thank God for you. Welcome to Agape.
And one more here. By the look of those push-ups, I'm exhausted just watching it. You must have just turned 27 or something.
Something like that.
Here we go. Oh, wait a minute.
That's my daughter.
Yeah, I want to go right to where you're introducing them.
Oh, yes. It's my grandson, King Che Fela Beckwith. It's my daughter, Michaela Alice Beckwith. It's my son, Keelu Francis Fanon Beckwith. And there's other DNA out there somewhere. But I appreciate the fact that while I was building a community with my cohorts, they were supporting me. Let's stop and let's just give thanks to the great God of the universe that's everywhere in its fullness. And that by means of us is bringing heaven to earth. We established ourselves as established beings in the higher consciousness. Joy and celebration, ecstasy and bliss, beauty and abundance, power, more than the world can give us. We have come to bring it to the world. And we give thanks for this, and we allow it to be so. And so it is. Amen. Thank you for showing up.
Wow.
All right.
That's my first time seeing that. And I just, for the first time, heard what the choir was saying when they were saying, celebrating Rev's birthday. I didn't know what they were saying. They rewrote Stevie Wonder's song. So thank you for playing that.
It's a great pleasure. Happy to share it with our folks here. So, another question I want to ask you. Back in the 80s, I had a company. It was really a training center in Silicon Valley called the Mind Center, where we had developed the state-of-the-art in brainwave biofeedback. And we trained a lot of people for stress reduction, panic attacks, spiritual seeking. We did studies with yogis and Zen masters and so forth. And we had one guy come to do our training one time. I'm not going to mention his name because it doesn't matter and it would be a violation of privacy, but he was one of the major gurus in the consciousness spirituality movement at the time. And this guy had a tremendous gift for inspiring people. And when he came in to do our training, I sat down with him and I said, well, what are you looking for out of your training? And he said, I'm really feeling depressed. And I said, well, what's going on? And there was various things going on, but the main thing was after all the time that he'd worked, he knew that he could get up in front of an audience of a couple of thousand people and spend a couple of hours with them and have everybody high as a kite. But then he realized over time that it wasn't lasting and it was really getting to him because he was inspiring people, but he wasn't empowering people. So it seems different with what I know about Agape and your ever-growing family there. My question to you is it sticking? The experience of entrainment into spirit like that, is something sticking other than they got a high with a whole bunch of other people on a Sunday with the Rev? Is something sticking, and what is that?
I appreciate that question, because one of the things I share is that you don't come to Agape to get high, you come to get free. And so the teaching itself and the practice, and particularly those who take the classes, take the meditation retreats, they're the ones who really personify the stickiness. You can actually see the shift of character, the shift of their personalities, the shift of their priorities in life. There's always a group of people that would just come like metaphysical window shopping, and come and do the services and go on about their business. But there's an ever increasing cadre of individuals that are actually going deep to get free rather than staying on the surface to get high. So what sticks is first, when a person first comes in, they deal with their own issues. They go through a process of healing, the revealing the wholeness within them. And then the second process we notice is that they're able to then articulate and catch vision for their life. I mean, why did they come to planet Earth? For what reason? And they begin to shift into the idea is to heal and then to discover why you're here. What gift are you to give the world before you leave? How are you going to contribute? The world doesn't have anything for you to make you happy because that comes from within. So what are you here to give? And then at the third level, the way of life changes. It's not just a temporary lifestyle. Their life is actually built around generosity, around contribution, around their dharma. And so we do notice that more and more groups of more and more people end up coming, healing, and then finding their reason for being on the planet in every walk of life. You know, as I said earlier, we teach people, you know, everybody can't do everything, but everybody can do something. What is it that's yours to do? Describe that, and then go for it, and the universe will support you. So there's a lot of stickiness, as you would call it. and it's evident by the number of people who graduate from our classes. Yeah. We have a number of individuals who have become spiritual practitioners, licensed therapists, number of individuals who have become ministers, and even those who don't go out and establish centers, even though some of them do, they find that they're able to bring this into whatever their walk of life is. You see,
your description actually sounds very scientific to me. Like you had some experiences, and then you had some insights. You know, you kind of had a thesis that maybe this is the way things work, and then you tested it out for years on yourself and with your friends and so forth, and came up with a synthesis of dynamics which can't be measured with the usual scientific instrumentation, except the workability of the thesis has been proving itself, you know, not only for decades, but for millennia, for those people who actually come across the science of spirituality.
Absolutely. Like you say, 1986, even before that, I was doing this, and I haven't invented anything. I mean, there are certain processes that are uniquely Michael, you know, like the vision process and things like that. But these are universal principles that have been around. You know, electricity was here before Moses, you know. So these principles have been here. It's just, are we applying them? You know, are we really opening ourselves up? You know, so when I started Agape, one of the things I said was, I had people in my living room. I started this vision process with them, and I said, we're not going to start with a business plan. We're going to actually work on ourselves to be the energy of unconditional love. Then, as we actually are able to stabilize those qualities within ourselves, then we'll go to the next stage of the how to start a community. So the people that started with me, we actually dive deep every Thursday night for months upon months, working on ourselves, holding the field of unconditional love for ourselves and for everyone else. And then I got the signal that we were ready. And then we began to do all the other things, look for a building, trying to raise money, blah, 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 blah. But we wanted to be the consciousness first, and then the physical manifestation of that consciousness second. And
well, years ago, you wrote a book, and the title was so compelling to me that it kind of gathers all this in one place. I mentioned before, you know, for people who are looking for the answers from money or from some particular spiritual teacher or from some circumstance or from a lover or something like that, I found it so profound that the name of your book was simply "The Answer Is You." And I know that you teach that in your congregation. You down at Rhythmia, you've got people who are teaching that when you're not there. So could you encapsulate for people, what does that mean? The answer is you.
Everything that you need is within yourself, and obviously we're talking conscious and not your body temple. And in that book, I break down the different structures that we live. There's our physical body, there's our mental body, there's our financial bodies, body of our relationships. I mean, there's eight structures that we live in. In the Western world, there's a belief that once you get some of that together, you're a success. And I teach you stabilize those structures so that you can now give your gift. So that the answer is you stabilize your financial structure, you stabilize your health, you stabilize your ability to be in relationship by having a deep sense of self-love and appreciation and working out all the issues within yourself. You stabilize all those structures. Now you can carry more cosmic energy and actually give your gift. Because if you're always in the hospital being sick, if you don't know how to handle finances, if you're always arguing with people and you always have to be right, and your ego's always running the show, then no one outside of you can make you happy unless you're doing some kind of deep dive within yourself and actually clearing up those patterns. And it's not about shame or blame or guilt, because those are not spiritual practices. It's about looking at yourself with a awareness of compassionate awareness, seeing what you need to shift, become willing to confront, embrace, and shift it. And then the world changes for you. No one else has to change. You change.
Yeah.
And then that which no longer is coherent with your frequency, it'll go out of your life. And that which it is will come into your life. It's very scientifically spiritual.
Yeah, no, it's such a clear roadmap. It kind of takes away the excuse of, well, I just don't know what to do. No, well, here it is, step by step, if you're willing to actually take on that path. So Sandra, if you haven't already, please put a link now to all of Michael's books, but especially to The Answer Is You. Okay, I think that go ahead, Michael.
That book is really good because it's really simple to read. It's not condensed. I mean, it's a lot of information there, but it's very simple. Anybody, a beginner or a veteran, can pick that up and glean the basic principles and practices.
Beautiful. Well, I think we've gone an hour, and we're going to go another hour with some more conversation with Michael and me, and then we're going to open it up to the audience for a live Q&A. But before we do that, we're going to transfer now the shift that I talked about before. We're going to be closing down the free platforms and inviting everyone to come and, if you're interested, join the Freedom Portal for free for a free trial. And with that, then you can get right back into this conversation. It usually takes people about 2 minutes to accomplish this process, and there's no charge. And then you can experience obviously this is an amazing opportunity with Michael. We've got an archive of 2 years of just phenomenal explorations and conversations. This is actually the final 2-year episode of the series that has gone 2 years, covering every sector, where we decided early on to have Worldview be the last sector. And this is the last episode in the last sector. We'll go on to other things in the future, but it's a very auspicious time because Worldview is the lens through which we see everything. And that's why I particularly wanted to finish with Michael. So we'll be continuing on to do that right here. If you're already in the Freedom Portal, then you just stay where you are. And meanwhile, Leandro will be guiding you as to how to get over there. And while he's doing that, those of you who are in the Freedom Portal, thanks for your patience for the few minutes that it takes to do this transition. And those of you who are already in, what I'd like you to do, if you're willing, is to put in the chat during these couple of minutes your answer, your most succinct answer to this question. How does your spiritual perspective help you deal with your growing awareness of the agenda for global domination and how you share that effectively with other people? So how does your spiritual perspective help you in confronting, a looming challenge of global proportions? And also when you try to share it with other people who don't necessarily agree with your perspective, how does your spiritual perspective help you in both of those tasks, personally and interpersonally. Okay, Leandro, take it away. If you would guide people as to how to shift over.
Yeah, absolutely. And first, I just want to just thank you, Michael Beckwith, for everything that you're bringing forward with Agape. I went through a very similar process to you, being atheist when I was young. I actually went atheist when I was 12 years old, and I started to get into like the new atheists, in my early college years, Dawkins and Sam Harris and these guys. And there was a time that I held a lot of resentment towards religion, particularly seeing the way it divided my family, most of which are Jehovah's Witnesses. And so, there was a lot of beauty and positivity in religion that I couldn't see at the time, that I could only come to see later, in the sense of like the way it builds community, the celebration, the gratitude that it instills in people. There's a lot of beautiful things about it. And so I just appreciate that I love the quote that there's a God-shaped hole in our heart. And so I appreciate that you're giving people a channel to fill that without all the dogma and division. So it's just beautiful, and thank you.
And we call ourselves a dogma-free zone. Before I went to SC, I attended Morehouse College, and me and a friend of mine who's now an attorney, we would go out and actually convert people from Christianity to atheism every single day. And we would count who won. I turned 3, I turned 6, but we had to study the Bible. We had to study all that stuff in order to be able to have compelling arguments as to why this was nonsensical. And so I was quite surprised when I had my spiritual awakening and realized that underneath the religiosity, there are basic spiritual principles in Islam and Judaism and Christianity that are coherent with reality, coherent with quantum physics, coherent with, so I was more surprised than anybody that I ended up doing what I'm doing.
Absolutely. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna walk everybody through the transition, but before I do that, we wanted to take a moment to show the Freedom Portal trailer that'll give you a taste of the sort of content that we have in this amazing catalog that you'll have access to if you decide to join our Freedom Portal community. So if we can go ahead and roll that.
Is freedom. We are in a lethal mess right now in the world.
They're lying, and we know they're lying, and they know that we know that they're lying, yet still they lie.
Did you see what Fauci said? You see what the WHO did? Things that start bubbling up that I just feel like I need to communicate with somebody because there's all this crazy stuff happening.
Media is the greatest enemy and is the greatest tool being used against us.
A lot of people are probably familiar now with the World Economic Forum saying, well, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. But these people plan to own everything.
But we forget that underneath that are a bunch of scared children who have nuclear weapons and biological weapons, and now artificial intelligence.
Technocracy and understanding that is really a doorway into the whole next level of red pill.
And that's one of the reasons why we're pushing so hard to expose this stuff and also to surface what are the ethical guidelines by which we can actually proceed harmoniously with the benefits of AI without falling prey to this authoritarian agenda.
This effort towards globalism and global governance is an effort to create extreme centralization. So a response to that is to decentralize.
The main promise that got me involved in the cryptocurrencies was the liberation and sovereignty of our species.
I think it's the most important topic on the planet right now. How can we create a universal morality that can actually guide us through all these different questions?
We are being connected by something much greater than ourselves.
People are gathering around truth and freedom because it's critical that we do.
Imagine the amount of human energy, creativity, liberation, release from fear.
We've got love, we've got the truth, and we've got the life force on our side. And ultimately that is going to be unstoppable, even if it's ugly in the transition.
We're changing the world. That's what's up, and the stakes have never been higher.
The good news is that this is still a story in the making.
All right. So for those that aren't already Freedom Portal subscribers, we really hope you take the opportunity to join us and come back and join us in this in the Zoom conversation in our internal Freedom Portal community, which is the best part in my opinion. So I'm just going to show you how to do that. It's a really simple process, but just to make it easy on everyone. Let me see. Okay. Are you guys all seeing that? Okay, so when you go to thriveone.com and click to start your free trial, it's going to take you to this page that'll give you the choice between the 2 subscription levels. You can be an Explorer or an Angel, and it'll also give you the choice between monthly and annual payment. So you can go ahead and select whichever of those that you like, and then click Start My Trial. Then once you do that, it'll take you to the thank you page and give you the link to return to the Freedom Portal catalog. Then once you come back to the page, you're going to want to click sign in to continue. Don't click the access now because you just signed up and created your account. So go ahead and sign in to continue. You can enter the credentials that you just set up in the account creation process. And then it's going to return you to the page that has the actual event. Now, this is the event from last week, but you'll see the event from this week with today's date and the thumbnail from this show. And you'll be able to click on that and then click attend. And once you do that, you can click join webinar. And that's going to bring you back into the show with us. And you'll be, again, here in our internal Zoom community where you'll be able to participate in the chat with the other Freedom Portal subscribers. And this is, you'll have to enter your credit card information in the process, just like a Netflix subscription, but it's, again, a 7-day free trial. So, you'll have access to Thrive too. We're pretty confident that you're going to love it and the catalog that we have. But if you don't, then you won't be charged. It's no problem. So anyway, we look forward to seeing you guys here. And yeah, let's get back to the show.
Okay, and while people are doing that transition, I had asked you to answer the question in the chat.